Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do. Our first hour is general discussion, media and virtual discussion. And make sure to ask those questions early and also vote on those questions so that we kind of stack them up to the way that you'd like to see them as a producer. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. Today, we're going to talk about Office Hours 2.5 and give you an update on where we are and where we're going. And we've got a couple changes coming, and so we'll let you know what that is. And we're thinking about some things that I'll talk about there that we'd like you to all think about and maybe come up with some solutions for us as we get going. So stay tuned for that. Let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Mitch, what do we got?
First in is Michael Forrest from London, UK. What is the most cost-effective way to upgrade from my Canon EOS 5D Mark III to get continuous eye tracking autofocus for webcam use and still use my EF lenses and get full-frame video?
Go ahead, Tom.
Well, Michael, if you buy the R5, the Canon R5, you're going to love it. And if you just get one of these adapters here, that EF to EOS R mount adapter, it's $99. There are actually three versions of this adapter. The $99 will get you there. There's one that adds a control ring or one that adds a polarizing filter, all the way up to $299. So that's probably your best route to get to all the features you want.
Go ahead, Bill.
And check Canon's website. They did have a DSLR small application that helped your DSLR, which was not designed for the video era, although it does video just fine. Allows it to be a little more controllable. I'm not sure if it does that specifically in terms of eye tracking autofocus, but at least Canon has official software that helps you make a DSLR into more of a webcam through the Canon system.
Next question.
Andy Kokendorfer from Vieira, Florida asked, ZoomISO version 2, is there a way around having to set the Zoom meeting host to local recording? Our company's Zoom tenant is set to cloud recording only for CMS integration. Thanks.
Yeah, I think currently, so I guess the question is, are you talking about everybody recording locally, or are you just talking about you recording locally? And if that's the case, if you're using ZoomISO, I think that it's just a matter of figuring out what device or what software you're going to use to record those ISOs. I think that, for instance, I believe that Memo Live actually can record all the ISOs as they go out. You can set those outputs. It just depends on your CPU utilization. But the easiest way, I think, is probably with one of the ISO machines, with an ATEM ISO, whether it's an Extreme or a Pro ISO or the ATEM Mini ISO. Those both will let you record those ISOs out if you're trying to record them from one location. Go ahead, Mitch.
Yeah, and today on After Hours at 3 p.m. Eastern, you'll have a chance to ask the question directly to Andy Carluccio, the developer. So pop in and sim.
3 p.m. today, Pacific Standard Time, in After Hours. Andy Carluccio is going to be in answering your questions about ISO. So it's going to be a great time to ask questions about ISO, and as Mitch said, and also we're going to be before the Q&A, Andy and I are going to be testing high bandwidth mode. So we're going to be testing on a couple different computers. So we'll have some things to talk about there. So we're pretty excited. So it should be a really good hour between 3 and 4 today in After Hours. So definitely check that out. Let's go to the next question.
Joaquin Matus from Imperial Valley, California. The Coldplay live broadcast from Buenos Aires is tomorrow. Being that this event is not shown in IMAX theaters, but in many standard theaters as well, how would the broadcast be distributed to all these theaters? A private CDN?
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, it says not just shown in IMAX theater. So it's going to be in IMAX, but I understand it's also going to be in standard def theater. And to me, this is the since the days when they passed out reels of film to all the theaters in those big metal canisters, they've been moving toward digital distribution. Obviously, their biggest concern is piracy and things like that. So whenever you take a digitized signal and send it to a place, you want to make sure nobody can get through it. But I imagine that most of the theaters across the world now have switched from that old delivery system of send a drive or something like that. I could be wrong about this, but I would imagine they're starting to get it plumbed in for pipes to allow them to distribute digitally per theater as needed. And so as long as they get the security things locked down, I think this is going to be pretty easy to send a version to an IMAX and a version that's more appropriate for a standard screen.
Yeah, it's It's surprisingly hard to send content to theaters. So, and the problem really is the internet. So a lot of times the DCPs, so when you go to watch a movie, those are DCPs, and those are coming in on hard drives, and they are encrypted, and also the DCPs have keys, and so they can key that DCP to only be available in the play hours or in the window, the play windows that are available. So they can be very tight about who can play what. And that was a really big deal when they created a digital format to distribute to theaters. And those DCPs are sent out physically, typically. You can download something like that, but generally those are still mailed out to the theaters. But they can be transferred and downloaded and then put into the system. The way that you get, there's a bunch of different companies, whether it's Trafalgar or Fandango, or not Fandango. There's another company that does these. I just can't think of it. I always want to call them Fandango. There's a couple different companies to do it. There's a couple different ways to do that. So the primary way is actually satellite. So satellite downlinks. So there's a lot of them that are already built for satellite. So these companies are, Trafalgar is the one that is kind of the biggest one, probably worldwide. Although in the United States, and I don't know why I'm blanking on it, because it's a company that has been doing this for a long time. It's not Fandango, anyway. But they do live stuff, and basically they're transmitting, and there's one theater, there'll be a satellite dish on the top of the mall, and there'll be one theater usually that has these capabilities in it to run that down. So it's not to any theater in the building. There's other ways to do that. So you have also broadcast solutions. So there's a company called LTN that does a lot of broadcasts. So these will do relatively low latency broadcasts. There's also the Switch, which is a higher quality than LTN. It's a much higher quality video and much lower latency. So the Switch is another way to do it. And then there is even, HLS video that can be sent out, which is still going to, if you want it to be safe, you might turn up that latency. So there's a couple different ways to get it to the theater. But the really hard part for the theaters is getting internet from the MPO, that's in the, getting the signal. It's easy to get it to the building. Getting it through the mall to get to the theater turns out to be a big deal. So that's those are the things that you kind of get challenged by. But for a big enough event, they'll bring they'll even add satellite trucks to the outside to bring them in. But you have to look at how much are you charging. If you're charging $10 and you've got 300 people, it seems like a lot of money. It seems like a lot of people, but it's still only $3,000, and a satellite truck is typically more than that. So the satellite truck would take that all up. So it really has to be built in to the systems to make that actually work. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you mention satellite, because it wasn't so long ago that I watched the Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier fight in a pay-per-view event at a local theater, and they just pulled a truck up front and threw the lines up onto the building because I wanted to see what was going on.
And what was the ticket price?
Oh, the ticket was like $25 back then in the 70s. That's probably pretty expensive for 75 or 25. But it was packed, and we lost the signal in the second half of the fight, which drove the people crazy.
That is the that's the problem. is that it's driving me crazy that I can't think of the name of the other company.
I did a quick search. Does Movie Transit sound familiar? No? Okay, that's one of the DCP global platforms.
I just don't know why. Like, I was literally just talking about it yesterday. So anyway, but yeah, so the main thing you have to look at is what is the cost of distribution. Now, if the satellite dish, if you've already spent the money on a satellite dish that is sitting on the top of the roof, the cost of distribution is almost zero, because you pay for the way that satellite distribution works is I might go to Buenos Aires, put up a C-band or KU band, and I uplink to a satellite, and then that I pay for the truck and I pay for the transponder on the satellite, or part of it. So yeah, I may get part of the transponder rather than the whole transponder. I might get a quarter of it or an eighth of it or something like that, and I'll send it up there. Anybody downlinking it doesn't have to pay for it unless they don't own the dish. So the downlink itself becomes very efficient because you don't have to pay for anything to get it there. So if the dish is already at the venue it's actually a pretty straightforward process of being able to deliver it. And sometimes you have one truck, sometimes you have two trucks. The big challenge, especially in a place like Buenos Aires, is you have to find a satellite that you can see from the venue that you can also see from North America, and that's actually pretty doable because it's basically a bounce, but that is something you have to think about when you're in Europe or if you're in Asia. A lot of times in Asia, when we want to do distribution, we uplink it or downlink it from Singapore, and then we use fiber to bring it back out. Go ahead, Mitchell.
And sometimes having a satellite truck is easier because I was doing production for a company called Food Court Entertainment, which did food court entertainment via satellite. And to get the rights to have the dish on the top of the mall was unbelievably hard. That's all I can say.
Yeah. And that's the malls. The malls. It's so funny because they're so close to not being solvent, and they're still so difficult to work with. I feel like at some point they would go, "Hey, we're actually going to be flexible," but that is not how that works. Fathom, by the way, Paul Buchan actually put it in there. Fathom Events is the one I was trying to think of, and that's the one that does a lot of stuff in the United States. So the two big ones are Fathom Events and in Trafalgar, two standard theaters. And then IMAX has its own distribution that goes out to, I think, 100 plus theaters out there. Next question.
Next question in, and it's a cross-panel question. Serge Blondin from Montreal, Canada, on the panel, asked, John, have you upgraded to Ventura, who's also on the panel?
Go ahead, John.
Have many machines here in my house. So I've got my main computer desk machine, which is this one, and it's upgraded. And I did a clean install on this guy because it's 2017 iMac Pro, and the clean install was greatly needed, and it's running fantastic. And I loaded Dante, and Dante didn't used to work on my 10 gig card, and it is working now. So that was a bonus. My M1 has Ventura also on it, and I'll be loading the new Dante drivers on that machine today. But everything's working great so far.
Next question.
Next question coming in to us from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. Can you illustrate what's going on with ZoomISO on after hours? What is the importance, and what will be the likely outcome and impact of this effort?
Yeah, so I don't know if I can illustrate it, but I can explain it. So I don't have my telestrator here. I don't know. I can't draw little pictures of. I don't know what kind of pictures you draw, ZoomISO. Anyway, so so what we have in after hours is there is a room that you can go into that has 12 of us talking to each other. It's just, and what we did is we recorded all of us individually, synced it up, and essentially made sure that we could you could just watch everybody. And it just feels like a conversation. The reason we did that is because it's really hard to test ZoomISO without it. So being able, like you set up a ZoomISO and you want to have a bunch of inputs of people talking to each other, how do you actually test that without asking it? What we were doing before that was we jump into Discord and we go, hey, everybody, can people jump in and turn on their cameras inside of after hours, and we'll all just try to figure it out. And that was great, but some days we got less and some days we got more, and we were like, it'd be really great if we just had people talking. And so what we have is literally a bunch of PCs in the office just looping ZoomISO, and not looping ZoomISO, but looping each person, and they're actually staying relatively in sync. And so they run through OBS, I believe, and then they each join as a participant in Zoom, and then they're in that meeting room. And so what they do is do that. And what that means is that if you're experimenting with ZoomISO, whether that's all software or hardware or anything else you want to do, you can actually you can jump in there with ZoomISO, request access to do it, and then you can just start testing. You can test with your hardware, test with your software, make sure that you can see everything, and it's just super useful to, like, I use it relatively often. Where I need to, I'm trying to figure something new out with ZoomISO, just jump in there. Now, we think that can grow a lot to where we could even be just doing, I was talking to someone who was trying to learn editing, and I said, you could just get your ATEM and get the ZoomISO set up, and now you can just learn how to edit. If you wanted to learn how to use Memo Live, you could just jump in there, feed all those things to Memo Live, and now you have a bunch of live sources that you can do super sources and cut to. And a lot of times we're trying to figure that out. Now you have this place to just grab signals and make it work. So I think that there's if you want to learn OBS, if you want to learn vMix, if you want to learn any of these things, all you need to do is jump in there and you can test those signals. Now, one problem is we have 12 and a lot of us aren't using 12 inputs. So we're going to build new ones. The new ones that we build are probably going to be 8 and 4. So it'll still be 12 inputs, but we'll have a conversation among 4 people and a conversation among 8 people. The other thing that we're looking at doing is doing one where we're all just talking all at the same time. That way you just have signal. And then it's just a matter of you can just see people talking across it, and you can jump to any input and make that happen. So and then we have a lot of other ideas, because I think it's a great way to learn how to cut a corporate show, a sports event, a concert. So there's a lot of different options for there. We have to figure out how to automate it before we start going down that path, because otherwise someone's going to have to set all that up every day, and we don't want to do that. Go ahead, Mitchell.
That test that we have in a breakout room is very handy. I've heard people talk about it. Might be its only one of its kind out there for ZoomISO, and perhaps we should think about updating it.
Yep. It takes a bit of a setup to update it, so that's why it's not updated. So it's and right now I'm in production, so we'll probably update it sometime late November, early December. We'll probably build the 8 and the 4 that's there, but it'll probably run until the end of November before we have time to update it again. And it's just because there's some setup that on our end, recording 8 of these at a time and making sure that they're all in sync and everything else is something we have to kind of think about. So, and I think we're going to try to be more purposeful of the conversation, just telling people what we want to talk about and that kind of thing. So, and we were just happy that everybody showed up when we did it the first time. But I think that we're gonna, we're gonna get better at it, and we'll do more of them, because I think that it's super valuable. Again, not just for learning how to use ZoomISO, but just being able to have live something that you can use to learn how to edit. So, or experiment with edits, or experiment with multiple inputs. Next question.
From Greg Gibson in Washington, D.C., Greg asks, I lost a couple of good clients in the past month to StreamYard. Is the handwriting on the wall now for independent virtual event production houses?
I think that this is where you want to be thinking about, with all of these things, you want to be thinking about how to improve the offering so that you're a step above that. StreamYard has a pretty low glass ceiling. So if you could turn it on and they can save some money by doing it themselves. But I think that, this is where the challenge, what I'm always working on when I do these, and it's part of why I tend to stay in hardware and everything else, is that I never do the same event the same way twice, ever. Like, there is a long list of things that I didn't like about the last one, and I try to fix as many of those events as I can, as many of those things as I can, and I try to keep on turning that dial up. And I'm more interested in getting a client to think about how much better and bigger it can be than trying to figure out how to fit into a smaller and smaller price point. So I'm always trying to figure out, how do we make this a great, how do we close the distance between what we're doing here and what we're doing there. I think that, if you're building a product that stands head and shoulders over StreamYard, when someone goes to StreamYard, they may come back and go, okay. And they may come back and do, we had a lot of folks with Hangouts when Hangout, I can just do all those myself now with Hangouts. But they ended up coming back because they couldn't, there wasn't a lot of the creature comforts that they wanted. Go ahead, John.
Alex did a good job articulating that. What we did is we showed the client 10 other people that had exactly the same layout as StreamYard, because there's very little extensibility on that platform.
Yeah, and that means that when you're building it, you have to be customizing those things. You have to be pushing the envelope of how it looks. You have to be, there'll be more and more work at producing really individualized products, which is very hard to do. It's hard to do with small teams. It's hard to do, like, one of the things that because what you want to do is you want your client to get used to creature comforts that only you can produce, or that it takes a little bit more work to produce than what they can do with StreamYard. So the breakout rooms where we can prep people, the teams that, the things that work there, again, individualized graphics, how to, customized countdown clock. Like, one of the reasons I don't use, when I work with a client, every countdown clock is built custom for them. It's a graphic, it's their font placed into it where it makes sense for their graphics. it's not. I never use any off-the-shelf countdown clocks because I feel like, well, StreamYard can do that, like, or other people can do that. Like those are, you want to be, you want to make things hard, and figure out a way to make it easy for you to systematize those, but constantly make it so that you're looking for all those little things to turn that up, and to figure out how to, you're looking for a client that's looking for something a little bit more there. And I think that there's definitely clients out there that do that. Or that are looking for that. And StreamYard, I think, can be a lot of times a great feeder system in the sense that clients can start doing events, but there's some point where they're going to hit that glass ceiling. And the main thing is knowing that the glass ceiling's there. Some people just get there and, oh, that's as good as it gets, and it's not. It's, StreamYard is pretty like, instant oatmeal with no additives, which is water. Like that's what StreamYard is. It's not that you can't eat it. It's not that it's bad for you. It's just that there's no muchness there. So that's the so I think that Greg's mentioning that there has to be if they're doing a lot of volume, that's when they're going to be, but you do build some repetition into those things, but you have to, I'm constantly trying to keep, when I do repetition, I'm always trying to there's like one or two new things that I added to it all the time. Like I'm just constantly adding little things to it, a little bit of tweaks and everything else, a little bit of something, because that iteration gives you the chance the repetition gives you a chance to iterate. And so if you keep on iterating, and you keep getting better, and you don't have to like change everything every single event. It's that there's one little, like you just keep and there's always one little thing that you could make a little bit nicer, and you just keep building that. What happens is it doesn't, especially if you're doing a lot of events, it doesn't seem like you're making many changes, but you've now created a huge distance between you and everybody else. Even someone who is could be competitive with you, this is customized to that client, and you're the one that understands how that works, and you just keep on tweaking those little dials. And so that's, I think that is the key. It's a hard business to be in that sense, but you want to keep on looking at it and look at what StreamYard does that can't do that you can, and then figure out ways to add those features. so that the client goes, oh, what happened to that? What happened there? And oh, this isn't as good of a product. And I think that one of the problems we get into is that, and Greg, I don't know what clients, or I don't know what your production looks like right now for that, but I think that if we're doing things that are easy, then it's easier to replace us too. So, and I know that you do a lot of things that are very customized and hard, so I'm not speaking to you specifically, but I think that the what I see a lot of people do is they get these off-the-shelf graphics packages. They use something that is not easily customizable. They do all the, they're just going to look the way it's going to look, and they throw a lot of those things in because it's easy for them to churn out lots of content. The problem is if it's easy for you to do, it's easy for anybody to do. It's easy to make it look that way on StreamYard. So I'm always trying to find things that maybe aren't hard, or that I can figure out a way to make them not hard for me, but they are, they're difficult to reproduce in a kind of a churning sort of way. Go ahead, Bill.
Also, this has to do with branding, and every company that's really done beautifully over the course of a long history at some point takes their branding very seriously. So if your brand is "we look like everybody else," then that's your perception. If your branding is that you will only see us with this type, these colors, every place you look, you start getting that synergy between the print work you do, the online work you do, even the sound work and things like that. It's just amazing that consistency is what drives public impression of the quality of companies. And we've seen it for decades. So if you want to not play in that arena, if you want to play in the everything's going to look like everybody else, okay.
Well, and it's just that it may not look like everybody else's, but you want to keep on just slowly adding. Again, what I'm doing all the time is I'm sitting there watching our shows, because I'm usually not that hands-on on our shows. I get to sit there and watch them, and I sit there and write things down, like long lists of, oh, this would be better if we did this. It would be better if we had a shorter depth of field. It would be better if we added another camera over here. It would be better if, and I'm not trying to add all those things in one show. I'm adding one little thing on every show that I think would make the biggest noticeable difference. And we just keep on adding things to a point where, in the past, when we've done that, you let us do something all the time, and we'll build a product that is so customized to that client that if they hire somebody else, it'll be a disaster. Because they're used to all these things. What we do automatically for them is so. I mean, all the way down to I talked about it in the past, but we used to do a bunch of work for Salesforce, and Salesforce, is white and blue. All of the power bars on the tables behind the stage were white, and all the cables to charge their phone were blue. And it was like we look for every little thing that we can keep on turning on those dials to make it just very, very customized, where it just feels like you're an extension of that company, not a service. And that's what you want to keep on, trying to figure out. If you get to work with somebody over and over again, you're constantly reading what they need, and you're trying to read not what they ask for, but something that would surprise and delight them. Like that, we talk about that all the time. How do you surprise and delight your client with something new and cool that they just never thought? They didn't even think that it was possible, and you've figured out some way to do it, and that it's sustainable, and you can do it, and then you just keep on adding those little surprise and delights into your product, and it makes it harder every time you add one. It makes it harder to be replaced. Next question.
Jens Olson from Sandpoint, Idaho. Has anyone used the new version of Mix Effect with the multi-view switcher view?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
I can't honestly say I have, but I have. And that what I mean is I updated, and nothing seems to have changed for the worse. The only thing I'm looking for as a neat little trick is that I'm running Mix Effect on my M1 Mac, which typically is not done. You can do it on an iPad, but it will work so long as the application has focus somewhere on your screen. You can't just run it otherwise. So it's hard for me to see it. What I would really like to see is whether it's happy with Ventura.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to play with it yet. I downloaded it, I upgraded, I'm all ready to go, and I just haven't. I've been so busy doing production, I haven't been able to look at it yet. So hopefully next week. Next question.
Dan Shaw from Columbus, Ohio. Any recommendations for how best to flip horizontally an iPad being used as a teleprompter? I'm trying right now with Duet, which is $3 a month. I've also tried a Luna display. Ideally, an HDMI monitor would be best, but none of them, for me, are bright enough.
Good, Mitchell.
It's kind of a tricky deal, because if you're using an iPad, I think Courtney, who is the inventor of teleprompters, essentially says that they're not good because it's hard to get stuff in and out of them when it's set up inside the teleprompters. So he prefers a monitor. I like using Lilliput, and there are Lilliputs out there that'll push out 1,000 nits or more, which is what you want. But here's the caveat to you getting super bright. If you're using it indoors, then you got the light coming back at you, and it can cause other problems with if somebody's like wearing a white shirt and you're doing Anteratron, you're going to start to light up white too. So you got to find a happy medium between the two.
Good, Bill.
Yeah, I use Lilliput monitors for my main teleprompter here every day, but I also, the software will take care of the flip in most cases, and so there's all sorts of software out there. I tend to use one called Teleprompt 3, or Teleprompter 3, but there's also little apps that you can use that does the flip. The difference is if you're just using it yourself for your own purposes, if you just want to put something on your own screen, you can get something that's pretty basic, because operatorability, if that's even a word, is not that mission critical for you. But if you ask Courtney and everybody else who's ever done serious stuff with like CEOs, that ability for an operator who is very skilled to go in and change and react to things and always be ready to run it becomes a huge value add in the level of professionalism you're perceived at. So there you're moving to software that is much more flexible, that you can get into and change copy really quick with somebody who knows how to type and change it really quickly. It's just a different level of service.
By the way, we did have a discussion about prompters with we were doing a bunch of teleprompting last week, and 4 days of it, of different, and we had different teleprompt operators. But in San Francisco, there is an app that was built, I don't know, I think in the 80s, that called Magic Scroll. And a lot of the San Francisco prompter folks, well, the people that we hire, I guess, are somehow connected to that. And anyway, they all use this app that you have to use like Big Sur, like it's very it's not a modern application, and so that begat. Now it's funny when you talk to a prompter operator about what does it take to be like why are they using this one, because I was very curious about it, and they were like, well, it's just that I don't have to push my finger down quite as much to get it to go up and down. Like it's very, very sensitive, this Magic Scroll, because it was built by someone who does teleprompt operating, and it's just the right thing for the Mac, right? Anyway, so it was a funny thing to talk to, but then we decided we started having people call around, ask, what is everybody using if they're not using Magic Scroll? And it's Presentation Prompter. So that is the one that is the Presentation Prompter. I use Teleprompt Plus, and I have Presentation Prompter. I own them both. But Presentation Prompter appears to be what most teleprompt operators at this point, at least on the Mac, are using. And so if you're looking for the one that the pros use, that seems to be the one that a lot of them use. And the Magic Scroll, I think we told the company we work with, I said, the only thing I want to know is great teleprompt operators, I just never want to see that app again. It was just like, we spent like a half an hour trying to get it to connect to a monitor. Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Well, I've added another little tool for myself just for here on office hours when I have to put up something and I've got to get it right. There's a little program called Virtual Teleprompter, and it's just a little app, and it sits there. It is the simplest thing in the world. It does not do much, but I noticed that it's very thin and very light. Right. And once you get used to it, it's just real simple for these kind of, I'm fixed in a position all the time, and I just want to throw up a note. And I'm not going to have a lot of changes.
But yeah, if you're using teleprompt software, they should all be able to flip. That's definitely something that you should expect. Next question.
Next question from Todd Rains in Allen, Texas. I just acquired a couple of Lumix BGH1 cameras. I love the control over LAN. Is there a way to control one-shot autofocus and zoom and other controls via Stream Deck and Companion?
Go ahead, John.
Jonas owns 3 or 4 of these cameras. If anybody who knows the answers, I'd hit him up in Discord. He'll know the answer.
There you go. Next question.
Goran Krasje in Slovenia, recommendations for a small POV camera, preferably with SDI output, price around $1,000 US. IDA Marshall will be used alongside Sony PXW-X160 and a Z190 camcorder.
Yeah, at $995, one thing to consider is still the Blackmagic's Micro Studio. A lot of us still have a couple of those laying around, and we still use them. They're light, they're easy to control. They have a good signal. They're Micro Four Thirds, so they're a little bit better than some of the other things at the sub 1,000 range, and they do HDMI and SDI out. And they have the HDMI out can have all kinds of all of your menus and everything else, and the SDI is a clean feed, so that's another good advantage. You can shade them. They're limited, and we just keep feeling like they're like 2 seconds away from being replaced, but they haven't been replaced yet. Go ahead, Bill.
For an on-camera monitor, I have used Marshalls in the past. I own 2 of them, and they've always been both dependable, and they also have things like false color and all the little niceties in there. You can do a full pixel-to-pixel display, and the things that as you move up are nice to have. Not the only one that works, but
yeah, and the Marshalls you can get for half of that. So $400, $500. Now they're not going to be same size sensor. I think that they're 1/2-inch sensors or 1/4-inch sensors for the Marshalls, but you can get very small little POVs, for them. So you can get a smaller, and they're not $1,000. They're definitely less than that. But I think that if you compare, like for instance, the Blackmagic Micro Studio to a Marshall, you lean towards the Micro Studio. it definitely looks a lot better than the Marshall. But the Marshall's smaller, and you can get it for half the price, and it does have SDI output. Next question.
Roscoe Jones, Madison, Indiana. Roscoe asked, we talked Wednesday about students needing internships to learn real-world skills. How about schools competing against local businesses? And there's a link to it.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
I haven't heard of it much in schools. I'll tell you, the one time I've been in a couple of really big kerfluffles about the production industry and about competition has been with sports franchises. I can't tell you the number of times that a stadium put in a ton of money, and the next thing you know, they're at the local video meeting going, come in and do your production when we're not having a game and we'll be really cheap. And I know all my friends who were running production companies felt that that was really a violation of, you can't get some giant thing where all of your gear is paid for and then go out in the market and compete with the people who are trying to make a living on it. So that's just one of the little pieces about internships and things like that. Good internships, they will care about, I think, a couple of things. They will truly care about your progress over the course of time, and they also will not be abusive in terms of we just want free labor. They really are writing that kind of fine edge between a training environment and a getting something for the company environment, and they look at both sides. That's been my experience.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I have a similar reaction that Bill has about competing facilities, because we had a local PBS station that, we would give money to. We gave it to them via taxes, or we gave it to them as donations. And they would usually undercut us meaning a regular production house, for work out there. And there was just something not quite right about that. So I think it's a similar situation.
Yeah. I think that the issue is that, again, as a production company, I very much work at not having a service that could be easily replaced by students. So I think that is, I want to get away from that space as fast as possible. So that means that I'm producing a higher quality product. I have, again, what we talked about earlier, more customization. I'm trying to create a more refined product. I'm trying to push, the envelope all the time. And I think that I definitely work with a lot of, I was the intern that took the work. At one point, I was an intern for, I got hired as an intern for Prime Sports Network, and I had never seen this thing called Photoshop and Photoshop and Illustrator. And I went and bought a bunch of books, and my internship was so low stress that I had about half the time to learn Photoshop and Illustrator. And so with a bunch of books and pushing the envelope, I was able to take the company, Prime Sports Network, bought me a computer. They spent, $15,000 on a computer for me, and they fired their ad agency. And then it took me about 8 weeks to take their work. And I was getting paid. I don't know what they're paying the ad agency. They're paying me $3.75 an hour. So, but for me, it meant that I had real world opportunities to learn stuff. So I became the regional ad designer for all their print work all over, the mountain states or whatever. And what's funny is that I built a system because, I just kept on iterating because no one's really worried about my hourly times because I was getting paid so little. So I was sitting there just playing all the time with what I was doing. And what I did is I took all the images, I pre-cropped them in Photoshop, built all the alpha channels, sent them to all the service bureaus that were in all the cities that we ran advertising in. So they had all of my images because that was the heavy part. We were dealing with dial-up modems. And so that was the heavy part to get to them. And so I'd get them all laid out there. Then all I had to do in Quark Express was in Quark, I would just build the ad, and they could give me an ad at 10 o'clock in the morning that they wanted to run in St. Louis. I was in Denver. And I could have it running the next day, and because I would just simply, I had all the templates all built inside of Quark. Now the funny thing is that I was still getting paid. They doubled my salary doubled my pay to $7 an hour, but cut my hours in half because that's the only budget they had. And so then I got half the day off to learn more, and I got to do these things. But it was hard when I left. They had to go back to the ad agency because they couldn't find another intern that could do that. And then the ad agency, I got these panicked calls from them, like, how are you running these ads on the same day? It was like, how does that actually work? And for me, it was an obvious solution to a problem, but for them it wasn't. And I think what it calls to, and why I bring it up, is that you want to your business has to keep looking for the edge. It has to keep evolving. It has to keep getting better. You can't have a business that is just churning out, the same thing anymore. Like that's just not a viable business. And if you're not getting replaced by students, you're going to get replaced by people putting it overseas. They're going to do all kinds of other things. If you're in the United States, you have access to a great market. You have a lot of tools that are available to you, but the cost is that you have to keep moving forward. And if you don't do that, you're not going to be able to keep up. And so I don't think that it's the same thing I have about like people getting upset with people coming up over the border from Mexico. I'm like, if I felt like I was actually being displaced by someone who English is their second language and they haven't, and they grew up in a pretty rough educational environment, and I feel like I'm getting replaced by them. Oh, that'd be really depressing. So you have to keep elevating your service. You have to keep elevating your work. You have to keep elevating yourself on a daily basis. And you have to be hungry and have to be scared all the time if you're running a business. And so if you're complaining about losing it to students, you're not working hard enough, in my opinion. Go ahead, Bill.
There's another thing too, a subtle thing that happens if you have unpaid staff on you, because you've got 4 interns and you're not accounting for the cost of replacing them in another shoot where you don't have interns, you can find yourself unrealistically pricing things and other things. I've had circumstances where, oh gosh, I don't have the 3 interns I had last time. We have to move this heavy thing. And it was easy with the 3 interns and the other guy who did it. But now I've got to hire people to come in and get this thing done, or it's not going to get it done, or figure out another way to do it. In the pro bono stuff I used to always charge full scale rates and then discount from that. And it was an idiom so that I made sure that I knew what it would actually cost to do that work if I didn't have all the pro bono stuff being tossed into it.
Yeah, and I have to admit I don't put unpaid interns into production. So if someone's unpaid, I have them doing things that they'll learn doing, or I'm not getting paid for that, but I'm not putting them in a mission critical position. So and that's just because I think it would be risky, to do that. Let's go to the next question.
From John Foltz in Selinsgrove, Pennsylvania, John asks, what's the best way to get audio from an iPad onto a Dante network? Mickey, I think Mickey said the same thing that I was thinking. I was just about to say Avio USB-C adapter. So it's a USB-C to Avio, and that will give you, I think, 1 in, 1 out, or with AES, I think you can get 2 in, 2 out. But with an analog, I think you get 1 in, 1 out from that. So that would be the solution. 2x2 on the USB-C, according to Mickey. So next question. Douglas Carmichael asked, we talked about how Coldplay's concert will be distributed, but how will they split the audio from the stage and send the mix to the uplink? They use Digico's SD7 consoles on an optocore loop. Would it just be putting a Dante card in the SD rack?
Yeah, so here's the thing about that. So you're tempted, the temptation is to use Dante or Matty to transport out of the Digico to another mixer. I have grown to really like analog, so a lot of times at these events, there's a lot of analog outputs that are actually available, and I prefer to use those. So even if I'm going to drop a stage box right next to it, so I might take a Rio box or something like that and just go all analog, all the things I need, go out analog and into my stage box, and then that's Dante or Matty on the way back. And the reason that I do that is because I don't want to deal with their clock. So the clocking, when you have Dante going between 2 different systems, or Matty, you end up with clocking errors, and it's really, really hard to take some setup. And when a concert, especially when they're not used to it, it is, the clocking becomes an issue to connect anything digitally. So we really want to do, and we've had trouble with both Matty and Dante with clocking, and so now I just want analog if I can get it. Go ahead, Bill.
The other thing is that the mix for front of house in a concert is not going to be the mix you want to send out over the air just kind of as a matter of course. All sorts of things happen on stage where you have to increase bass or do knock out treble, and you don't want to do that necessarily for the show going to people. So it would be typical to do channel inserts of everything, have a second mixer who is responsible for mixing the output onto the web. And so that board can be summed down to stereo or whatever, and at that point you're talking about the the loop up, but it won't be the same mixer.
And it depends on how many sources you're trying to get. So, we've had sources that we have upwards of 90 channels. We don't necessarily want all the channels, like all the tracks. So then we start asking for stems. And we might want a lot of stems. We might want, 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 stems. Usually there's some breakout in what we're doing. So, but having them group some of those together so that we don't have to have individual control, because we don't know the show as well. And so it makes it a little harder. Next question.
From Josh Kaufman, Pittsburgh, PA. Office Hours 1000th show will be arriving on Monday, December 19th. What programming would you like to see? What are your favorite highlights in your history with Office Hours? Planning has begun. Kilo Show discussion thread in the Future Shows section of Discord.
Well, definitely you want to jump into Discord and let us know. Mickey says he wants a show with 2 hours of Q&A. There we go. So I think that we really do have to start thinking about what are the highlights. What are the things that all of us remember related to to what's happened, and so trying to pick out sections of it and then talk about those sections. And what did Matt in the kitchen mean to us? What did Damianti's cooking mean to us? What is the Raspberry Pi project? What all the different things that I think we need a montage of birthday singing. Yeah. I think.
Oh dear.
I think we just cut. I think you do the whole thing. Happy birthday to you, but we cut to different versions, different times we used it. I don't know how we're going to find those, but just so then it's not any longer than the length of the birthday thing, but it'll all sound the same because it's all just one giant train wreck of a thing. But I think it's a funny thing that we do. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I think those are great suggestions, but unfortunately, I think we also should have some of our famous bloopers and faux pas of the show. Ones that nobody's being hurt.
No.
My
first 3 months as the reader. No.
The Grant and Andy.
But that's history. That is lore, but it happened in After Hours. So that was but we can talk about those things. That was a great introduction. But yeah, I think figuring out things that, and I do think that looking back and talking about things in After Hours or Office Hours, I think is worth, talking through as well. So yeah, we'll kind of look at that. I'm 19th. I'm going to take the 19th off. That's all I'm saying. So I want to make sure that, we'll make it a long day. So anyway, all right, next question.
Douglas Carmichael is back. Would open back headphones be more comfortable over the course of a long session than closed back headphones? I could see greater risk of feedback when using open back headphones near a mic.
Go ahead, Alexander. Alex?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. For me, open back headphones they definitely breathe better. For me, I am able to use them even in a tracking session if I can control the volume just so. If you're careful about it, it won't really bleed too much into the microphone. Would I ever give it to talent? No, I would never give in a recording tracking session. I would give them a pair of closed back headphones. It's just too risky.
Good, Bill.
You get used to whatever you're used to using. I've been using 7506s since the dawn of time. I tend to change the ear cups from the standard flakeable plastic to some form of fabric. But other than that, your headphones are a really personal thing. It's just you get used to the sound of them, first of all, and then you get used to the field. And I know that if I'm in a long mixing session and I have to wear them for multiple hours, I just forget about them. And that's what you want. You want to get out of the technology and get into the signal that you're trying to pay attention to. And for me, if I change to something with a different signal profile, I wouldn't be as good with getting things right because I understand these headphones and what they are giving me. I understand that, the 7506s traditionally have a little presence peak that makes it easier to hear voices because that's mostly what I'm listening for. If I didn't have that, I would be pumping up the mid-range on voices to try to get that back because that's what I need to pay attention to. So,
good, Mitchell.
Yeah, the old radio days didn't play well with open-backed headphones because we had extraordinary amounts of processing and compression. In fact, it was so much we used to kid that if we cracked the microphone and we had the headphones loud enough, all the papers in the room would fly around and stick to the microphone. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yes, instant feedback would be the problem.
Next question.
Next question from Tom Ferguson in Phoenix, Arizona. Alex, did you get your new iPhone small rig yet?
I have not gotten it yet because it's in this. I have this the Peak Design, and so that's been what I've been using for it, and I just haven't needed to put a whole bunch of other things on it yet. And I've been buying so many things. Oh, Tom's got it. So is it this pretty much it's the same thing? Just now fits on that phone.
Well,
Anything
space
new?
gray iPhone 13 and space black, new black small rig.
They are different
Oh,
tonalities.
Black. Okay, now
Mhm.
now it's all business here. Yeah. So and it's otherwise pretty. Has there been any other changes to it?
No, it's just the perfect little small rig that you always love. Same
right.
bayonet, moment lens mounts.
Credit cards.
The worst part
All-
is I bought the wrong one. I bought the wrong small rigs for something. I think I bought 13s instead of 12s, and I realized, I have 12s that I was using for production. So I have one for my 13. They're still in the box because I was like, I'm going to return these, and then I set them down, and they got lost. And so I got. If people have 13s, reach out to me in Discord because I'll sell them to you for a song. Because I got 2 of them sitting in a box, but they're great. They're really good. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I was just going to say, small rig makes great stuff, and I have cages on all of my cameras. But a small rig for an iPhone is a no-brainer. You got to do it. You got to put it on there.
Next question.
Next question from Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas. What does Josh do behind the scenes in office hours back-end operations center, particularly with sign-up sheets and worksheets?
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Everything. Josh is constantly talking to us all, helping us with all sorts of behind-the-scenes management stuff. I mean, those of us who are doing shows like my Final Cut thing, Josh is really my point of contact to make sure that things get into the listing for people. He's working with me constantly about topics that are coming. There's just, you cannot do something like we're doing here on Office Hours without a lot of back-end work and organization where multiple people need to have some sort of coordination central hub. Often that is a person, and kind of Josh forms that for, I think, the face of the show here and does a fabulous job. I don't know what I'd do without him.
Yeah, Mitchell?
Yeah, ditto to Josh. He does quite a bit on the back end and always is available. I don't want to sit here and just blow smoke, but Josh, you're really good at what you do, and it seems like every question I have has to go to you. So anything I can do to help, I'm there for you.
And Josh, a couple things. A new survey form for new volunteers. So he just finished that. Corresponds with volunteer questions and provides direction for onboarding into the system. Collects interest in volunteers for office hours, special shows, and organization. And amend, update, volunteer share updates. And then of course Josh is really accountable at this point for the second hours. So the second hours are he and I talk about them, and he's really the one that makes them happen. Next question.
From Douglas Carmichael, the VFX company called Silverdraft built a mobile studio supercomputer in a trailer. Could you see use for such a vehicle in bringing real-time responsive visualization to live events?
I didn't have enough time to kind of really dig into seeing it. The third floor it does mention the third floor there, and I've known Dan for a long time, who was one of the founders there. But a lot of times people do want to see things while they're working. So having visual effects and compositing on site makes it a lot easier to check things and make sure that, is this actually going to work? Go ahead, Bill.
Well, my 2 cents is there's always people at the top end who need every bit of horsepower in their computing that they can possibly get. They have legitimate needs to really stay up there on the bleeding edge. There's also a lot of us, and I think I consider myself inside of that, where all the work that I do, even my video editing and the rest of the things, which traditionally have been considered a pretty heavy load, the machines today are just so good that stock machines off the shelf can do a lot of what it used to take really bespoke high-end software. So for me, the challenge is always to figure out where's the sweet spot? What do I need to invest in to get the power that I need, but not just listen to the articles and go, this machine is killer and you really must have it, and then find out that I'm buying 10 times or 100 times more processing power at a premium than I actually need.
Next question.
From Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. Favorite mic stands for small stages?
Go ahead, Mitchell.
He didn't say when and if they're still available, but I love Keith Monk's. They were classics, an English stage person, and they were just so solid, so neat, and every part could be removed, and it was precision, personified.
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I used to have huge Atlas stands, which were the studio standard back in the day. Everybody has kind of moved to tripod stands that are much less heavy and break down smaller. The old mic stands that had a cast iron kind of round base on them, they made their stability by having an incredibly heavy weight. That's great if you're going to sit it in a studio and not do anything else with it. If you're going to try to take it out in the field, it's a disaster. So it's always a combination of how much weight, how much stability, how much leg spread you can get out of it. You're judging your stands based on what you're going to be doing with them and trying to find the right balance.
Go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, if you have the space for it, try to get a mic stand that has the typical tripod legs, because it does add more stability. If the floor space is a premium, I like the K&M 260 stands that has the extra heavy cast iron base, so it does add quite a lot of weight and stability there, and then you can attach a 211 telescopic boom if you need that extension on the arm.
Yeah, I have to admit that I don't do enough stage stuff that I buy expensive ones, and so I think I have what's called a Nomad that I'm using right now, actually, and it's $35. Like, it was not a particularly expensive one. I know that there's a high probability that they won't last very long. I mean, so here's where they break down is where you're tightening them. So all the little pieces that you tighten to get it just to where you want it are the places that start to come apart. And so because I'm not using these every day and I'm not pushing them, I just went for that. I actually keep on meaning to watch. There's a whole segment on Audio University on YouTube, which has become one of my favorite little channels. He's just very methodical about going through some audio, technical thing. And I saw one go by that said mic stands, and I've been so busy I haven't been able to look at it. But he has a whole thing on how to buy the right mic stand. So check that out. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael, telehealth has been a more dominant modality in the past few years, but as I've seen, awareness of quality audio-video varies. Could targeted marketing support by retailers, DVE store, help, or do we need regulatory requirements on this front?
Good, Bill.
There's already a ton of regulatory requirements, particularly the HIPAA issues that have to do with any time you're doing any kind of a discussion of patient-doctor relationship stuff. Now, that said, we have become huge fans of it here in my household, my wife and I don't think, it's usually 2 or 3 telehealth visits and then something in the studio if we're doing a physical or something where you really need hands-on care. We get them both out of our health care providing system. But I will say that both of us have really come to feel very positive about the telehealth world. And that means that they're going to help facilitate getting all the HIPAA things and all the regulations and everything else kind of settled down, because it's just too big a boost to doctor productivity to not do this.
The best thing we can do as users is show up looking really good, and they're like, and then the doctors are embarrassed. I literally had someone had to look at my foot, and I did one of the telehealth, and he's like, I just got to ask you, what are you doing this with? Like the doctor was like, how are you doing this? Because I had multicam. Like, I'm sitting there on my telehealth thing with I cut to my foot, and then I cut back to me, and then I cut to the foot, and then I had it zoomed in, and I actually had a micro on the micro thing, so I zoomed in on my foot, and then I pulled back out to give him something, and he was like, I just have to know what you're doing, because and he actually had me send him. This is early in COVID. Had me send him a list of like the hardware, because he was just like, this is amazing, and so I think that there'll be some doctors that can see that and see the possibility. But the best thing we can do is be good examples. Mitchell, real quick. We're almost done.
When my doc used to come in to see me, I'd sing the famous Nielsen song, "Put the lime in a coconut and call me in the morning." So when I did my first telehealth visit during COVID, I had the song queued up, and I played it when he came on.
There you
and
go.
he's like, ah.
Yeah, I know who you are. You're fine. Get out of here. I don't want to hear that song again. Next question.
Paul Valhus in Austin, Texas asks, Facebook is broken for many. It has great tools for showing photos and videos. but you can't count on it, and it is near impossible to get support. How would you get Facebook's attention to get some actual support?
There's most of these, Facebook and Google are not built for that. They're built for you figuring it out. Like, it's a free service. They're not charging you for it. So they're also not providing a lot of training or a lot of feedback. But the math is you're not paying for it. So they don't owe you it. Next question.
Last question for the hour, in from Douglas Carmichael. We hear about music and audio production on the iPad, but where have you seen the iPhone used for professional audio applications?
Well, we've seen for professional audio applications. I'm trying to think of where I've seen that. Not very often. I will say that I'll give you guys a preview that most likely my pick of the week next week is going to be this. The one that I'm really excited about is Moises, I think, Moises. I talked about it a day or two ago. Wow. I'm having so much fun with it. You download a track, you throw it up there, and the AI splits up all the instruments. It's really cool. So anyway, I see that as something that people could use to kind of prep things. It'd be really interesting to see what happens. Mickey also lists out a couple things. Sound devices, remote, Wingman. Those are both stuff we've used in the past. TC Work Toolbox, Frequency Finder, Electrosonics, RM are some of the things that he was talking about there. All right. Now we're changing subjects. There's not a lot of questions, and so this might be a really short hour. We'll give you an update of what we're talking about. If you don't have questions, again, it will not. I'm not going to try to stretch. So we've got another show later today, and I have like 3 hours of sleep. So if you don't ask more questions, it'll be a short hour, and we'll move on. So, but let me give you some updates on what we're working on for 2.5, and at least let you know how that's going and answer any questions that you might have. We were going to move. One of the reasons we wanted to have this meeting is we were going to move everything tomorrow. We're not going to do that. We're going to take another week to document a little bit more. So one of the things that we're doing, as I think I talked about the last time, is we're going to be moving from the small rack that we have right now to a much larger rack to give us space to put all the new hardware in and any hardware we come up with in the future. And so to do that, we're trying to document everything very carefully, because right now it's running fine. When we move it, we want it to run fine again. Right now we're scheduling that for next Saturday. So right after the Saturday session, next Saturday, we'll start migrating from one to the other, which means Sunday could be really exciting. So we'll see how that goes. But that's why we're taking some extra time to do that. Also working on the ISO audio. So I will say that audio is the thing that we're the most that we're trying to figure out. So we have an X32 lined up to do it, and we're going to do Dante out to that X32. The real question is that to do what we want to do with the number of panelists and the number of inputs and everything else, we're right stacked at the very top of what the X32 can do. And it always worries me to build a system around something that doesn't have any headroom at all. So I'm a little concerned about that, and I'm trying to think of other solutions. One of the things we've been looking at is potentially using the mix bus, from Harrison as could we use a software mixer? And that's been something that I've been thinking about a little bit. So that we just run it into a Mac Mini and then we do all the mixing there. There's the X32 potentially, or should I look at a larger mixer? But we're trying to kind of figure out, how we want to manage audio. So that's, I think, probably one of the biggest things that we're still wrestling with related to that, and something that you'll see us kind of play with and work our way through as we go forward. So that's something there that we're, that's going to be a big piece of us getting things working in that process. I think we've already turned over to 2.0, and I think that the video looks better than it did before. So ISO 2.0 has already been incorporated. We're also talking about how do we add more automation for the setup, and those types of things are still in the offing. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I've been playing with Charles on developing a LUT that I could put into my camera to make it something specific to office hours and what it should look like in this environment and what's the best way to make it look. And Mickey's been helping me get a few tweaks in before we do that. Do you think it makes sense for each of us to consider doing a LUT on our end?
For those of us who have the camera, I mean,
But I was going to say, should it be done at the other end on the 2.0 version?
Our goal is that everyone gets close, and then there's a supply chain issue with getting the hardware that we want so that we could color correct each person. So our goal is that everybody gets relatively close to a solid solution, and then we can do final tweaks here. That's what we're trying to get to, and but we haven't totally solved that yet. We're still working on it. Next question.
It wouldn't be too hard. I mean, granted, my camera can upload a LUT into it, but all you need is one of those little Blackmagic boxes for like $50.
But like, for instance, I'm using a webcam today, so how do we do that? So that's
as long as you have HDMI in, you'd be okay.
I mean, that's the problem. If you don't have HDMI, we don't. If we don't have HDMI, we don't have any way to do it. And again, I think that if people can each person get as close as they can, a LUT. If you have a LUT, then use it and get as close as you can. But I'm not ready to require that yet. I'm just happy that everyone has a sharp image. But I think that we should be able, if it's relatively well exposed. And not too troublesome, we should be able to find a way to color correct it, into a look. We'll keep pushing the envelope of that over time. Next question.
Next question is from Chris Widener, Lafayette, Indiana. This may seem like a crazy question, but will we ever get to the point for custom per panelist stingers like Monday Night Football?
Yeah, I want one where it pops up and goes, "I'm Alex Lindsay," and say something with my my little head over a green screen. I don't think it might, but I think that we're probably gonna. I want us to keep pushing the edge of how it looks. I just don't want to try to. I'm always afraid of going over the precipice and being goofy. So I don't know how much further we'll go as far as number of features. Every feature for me, I want it to be something that really adds to the value of it and isn't just to do. Go ahead, Mitchell.
I was talking to John Wolford, who owns a company called Jam Creative Productions, which is the company that does most of the radio jingles out there. And I was thinking maybe we should have some jingles done for us. I still have my old Mitch in the Morning jingle that I used to use on the radio, but I think it would become very annoying.
It would be super annoying. I hate jingles.
Super annoying then.
So sorry. I like them for commercials because they're being used for a certain period of time. The ones that drive me crazy are ones in shows that I have to listen through. But I have to admit, I'm very much an all protein kind of content.
How about "You're muted"?
No,
not going to happen. Okay.
No, go ahead, Bill.
I really want an NFL. The first time I'm there, my little icon goes.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they do that in the NFL. Or that or a 180 degrees of a 360 spin around me in my chair here.
Yeah. Next question.
Chad Lafarge from Columbia, Missouri asks, what's the current spend on gear and tech for 2.5?
I don't know. Is that a good answer? I think that, we're definitely buying a couple things. We are on the precipice to make sure that we can keep on running everything that we're doing is, putting up something on the webpage where people can donate some money if they want to, because I think that we're into a couple, it's a couple $1,000s so far, but I think it'll be probably a couple thousand more as we kind of keep on creeping down there, because we're trying to, in this process, trying to kind of make all of that work. So, but yeah, so there is some money there. We might give some opportunities for people to donate some money to it in the near future, just so that we can make sure that we're not cutting any corners just because we didn't have cash to buy one more router or do other things like that. So, but I'm not sure exactly what the price is right now. Next question.
Taylor Sunderhouse from Cincinnati, Ohio. Can we talk about the audio-only stream and its future?
Yeah, so Juan C. Robles has put together a great app, and I think it's going to go out to beta in the next week or two, and hopefully people will download it and see if they like it. But it doesn't, we try to keep it very simple. You turn it on, you hit play. It just does the thing. It plays the stream. One of the things I'm working with Taylor on is what do we do for the other 22 hours? And so we're working on building a playback system that we can, Taylor's helping me spec it all out and buy it, and just buy a little PC, and basically it's going to do 24 basically do 22 minutes of play, or 22 hours of play out, and then go to the live, and then go back to 22 hours of play out. So we're working on that solution so that you could just turn on office hours. You could open up the app anytime you want and just listen to the last 10 days. And when you get to the live one, it's the one right before the live one is yesterday's. So if you get up early or whatever, you can see that. Go ahead, Mitchell.
You could use a Barracks in-streamer to do that. They have an SDK for it, so it might be something to consider.
Yeah. The Barracks. There's a couple programs that do playlists because we want to do is have one machine that's managing the playlist as well. Does the Barracks have a playlist, or does it just convert to?
If it doesn't have what you want, Jonas could make it happen.
Yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
Well, it's interesting to me because when I was hosting yesterday, I had some things that my wife had said were bullet points about the topic we were talking about. And one of my biggest sins is you don't read people a list of anything. But I thought, well, wait a second. Now we've got people who are listening only. And if I expect the audience to see something visually, I'm leaving out a big chunk of the audience there. So for me, it's a process of trying to hybridize that, making sure that an audio-only audience is served as well as an audio and video audience.
And I think that there's a lot of places where radio, like the Lehrer report or whatever, would have, there's some things that were visual. And I think that our show 90% of the time is an audio show, and there's occasionally some video there. And I'd rather I don't want to dumb it down. Oh, we can't do this because we can't understand what's happening with the audio. But I think that we do want to be conscious of that as much as we can. Next question.
Next question in from Douglas Carmichael. Will we be able to still use multiple M1 nodes for ingest, even with NDI and ZoomISO 2.0?
We're using decklink cards with them right now, and we'll continue to do that. So we'll have decklink cards with these to take the folks out of that system. Next question.
Next question coming in for what is the limitation, from Alexander Knight in Vancouver. What is the limitation we're running into with the X32? Not enough I/O, or is there some other impediment?
Right now, and I can't list them all off the top of my head, but we had a meeting about it, and we are, in the last dev meeting, we were at 32 channels in. So there's 20 for the panelists, there's playback, there's a couple other things there, and we're at 32 in. So it's the number of tracks that we can bring in is the limitation right now. Next question.
And it's from Douglas Carmichael. Will we be using IT automation DevOps tools like Ansible or Puppet in order to streamline maintenance of the Office Hours 2.5 infrastructure?
I don't know what we're going to be using, but we're definitely going to be automating more of it. So our goal is to get to a point where a lot of this stuff all just launches up and works on it. And so we're definitely talking about that. Next question.
From TJ Asher in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Since Zoom does not push HDR videos, so how are we going to get HDR video out of it? Are we just faking the dynamic range we get out of Zoom?
Yeah, so we're going to take that. We've done it in the past with Zoom for other events. We're going to take that 8-bit footage and we're going to stretch it out, and it will look better. Like it does look better in HDR than it does in SDR, even if the data is not there next. But that's, again, only the panelists. So remember that the graphics will look way better. If we're doing local production, or we're showing any kind of playback, or we're doing a live view that might have the ability to do this, then that's all going to be coming in and then converted, and that's going to look great. So the panelists themselves are at 8-bit, but everything else could be at 10-bit or 12-bit, and then that would let us stretch it all out. So we're really looking at the whole show, and the panelists being just part of that. Next question.
TJ Asher from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Early on, we had talked about having a moving background for the super sources. We seem to have settled on a static image. Is there still a plan for a dynamic background?
Unless someone changed something, the one that we have actually moves very slowly. I don't know if they've taken that out and not used it. There is movement in it, but it's very slow. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yes, it is moving.
Yeah,
you did it. It's the original.
Yeah. So there is some movement in that background. It probably could be faster, but that's what's there. Next question.
Chris Widener from Lafayette, Indiana. If office hours went to a software mixer, which one are you leaning towards?
Yeah, I mean, the one that I've been looking at is Mixbus. Now, you could also do something like Pro Tools or Logic, or you could mix inside of those. But I was trying to find something that might be possible there. Next question.
Josh Kaufman from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We're currently only hosting internal guests for our second hours. Can you talk about what kind of stability we would like to see before inviting outside guests onto the OH 2.5 show? And what will it take to get there?
Mostly we want to, there's just a lot of things people are tweaking right now on the back end. And we want to make sure that if something breaks or falls apart, that we don't have an external partner that we have to apologize to. I think the next big thing we're doing is we're going to be switching over the hardware, and I definitely don't want to do it before then. And then after that, we have Zoom. Probably the first thing we do is we'll be covering Zoomtopia to some degree, and so we'll be having that go through the new system on that the week after, on the 7th, 8th, 9th. There'll be some stuff to do there. So that's probably the first time we'll have external folks that are in it. Go ahead, Bill.
I just remember back on the Cinegear coverage, I had a couple of folks that I asked to come in, and they came back to me afterwards with two thoughts that it was really surprising. First, how complex our back-end system felt to them because they've only done Zooms where they click on something on their screen and that's it. You don't do anything else. So they were shocked at how professional the back-end people were. And that's the other piece of it. Our back-end team really just acquitted themselves incredibly well. They were both gushing about how professional and how useful everybody was in terms of getting them ready to come on stage and do the show.
Well, and I think that one of the things we keep on hoping to do is, while you don't need that for an event, is learning how to do that. How do we create all the creature comforts for a real event? And this gets back to a question earlier, like how do we not get replaced by Vidyard services? Things that when you're, there's always going to be clients that want that little bit more. They want, and again, if they get used to that there's someone who's greeting them, that there's someone who's putting them together, making sure hair and makeup, and there's, setup and process and everything else, and then they try to do it themselves, and that doesn't occur. They're like, oh, let's just find the money to pay the people who can do it. So, but our goal is that lots of people in our group, that becomes second nature, that they understand how it works, they understand how to take care of people, they understand how the technology, needs to be used. And I think that's a big, what we hope people are practicing in that process. Next question.
Next question coming in from Douglas Carmichael again. What viewer side changes will we see with 2.5? Will it be as dramatic as the 1.0 to 2.0 move?
I think that I don't know if it'll be as dramatic, but it will. Again, we're looking at trying to get to a point where hopefully we'll be able to color correct each person, that we can correct audio per person. So we're trying to get the ISO audio working. So once we get that working, theoretically we can correct the sync for every single person, as well as, people leaving their mics open or closed may become over time less dramatic. We can start doing auto switching based on the audio from the channels. And so there's a bunch of things that we can keep on adding to that system to make it a lot nicer. So I don't know if when we first kick it off, but there's a lot of stuff happening on the back end that is going to make the product more stable and just be cleaner. And then our job is to try to fix all of our videos and as much as we can, and then we'll keep on turning those cranks. But I think over the next month or two, it's going to be pretty interesting. Next question.
It's from me, and then my question basically is: can we talk about things that might be breaking as we make that move to 2.5?
Yeah, I mean, is there something breaking for you right now?
Nothing's breaking for me. I just know there's a little scramble this morning to get things together. Yeah,
so as we make those changes, that's why we don't want to have external guests right now, is as we start to make those changes, we expect things to blow up. Like, oh, well, that didn't work today, but we'll get it working tomorrow. And there may be days where we go back to the vanilla webinar because we don't have any way to get the show off the ground. So we're definitely conscious to that might be a possibility at some point. Next question.
Josh Kaufman's in from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. All previous office hours updates have largely been feature updates. What are the office hours 2.5 and later updates goals as far as redundancy and backup gear, strategy, and personnel?
Yeah, so I mean, we definitely, once we get to a point where we feel like we're having a stable show, we've got a lot of the stuff. We're making changes into Isadora to make things easier. We do have to look at backup strategies. And so how do we eventually fund being able to build another hardware rack that makes all of that happen? How do we potentially, one of the things I'm looking at is how do we start thinking about either 3.0 or 4.0 being, I think 3.0 is still going to be hardware, but I think 4.0 is going to be in the cloud. And so one of the things that I'm trying to think about is, should we run, for instance, the weekends or one day a week in the cloud? Like just to start thinking about it, thinking about what it would take to do it. So a Saturday or a Sunday, do we put that into the cloud and try to run it from there, so that we can start getting our head around what are the deltas, what do we still have to fix, and maybe we find out there aren't any. so that then it becomes 3.0 instead of 4.0. But I think that with some of the resolution things that we want to do, and again, if we're successful at some of the stuff we're working on, we're going to be on the stage and there's going to be 12 cameras, and ingesting 12 cameras from here at really high at 4K, 60 frames a second is hard to do in the web or in the cloud. so that's the kind of stuff we're still thinking through there. Next question.
Actually, it's a question that Andy has floated out there, Andy Carluccio. He's saying some other interesting Office Hours 2.5 projects have been the use of ZAC tokens to automate joining flow and actions, and also fixing the black flicker, which is a good thing for this past week.
Yeah, and again, we're just slowly tightening those bolts and slowly getting all the little things that make us feel like it's not quite a broadcast show. So, we're going to keep on working on those things, both the panelists, so we're going to do more. We did an audio ruthless review, and the next week or two we'll do a video ruthless review and keep on tweaking all of these things. I did have a friend of mine looked at when we were doing the audio ruthless review and just talked about how raved at how everybody looked and sounded. Like, he's just like, this is really good. And so, I think that we're still open to suggestion. We're still working on what those things look like. What I would say is that I'm not looking for a lot of pizzazz to be added to the show. What I am really looking for is, how do we make it feel solid? Like, if you saw this and then cut over to CNN, you wouldn't see any dramatic change. That's what we want to keep on looking at, without getting too much into weird bells and whistles that aren't really adding to the conversation. Go ahead, Bill.
On behalf of myself and a bunch of people who are undoubtedly watching and or listening to this, what is a ZAC token?
A ZAC token is really it's a token that allows people to start a meeting or join a meeting. So it handles a lot of the permissions that you need to make that actually happen. Next question.
From TJ Asher in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Saturdays is a practice day for folks who want to read or other tasks. Is it possible to use part of Sunday as a practice day for readers who may be very nervous about being recorded?
Yeah, I'm open to giving up the reading. I think I understand it now. Or I might take it back occasionally, like once a month I'll do the reading. But I think that otherwise we can have people who want to start reading without any recording to start on Sundays. So if you're interested in that, I don't know who to talk to. Josh. We'll just use me. Talk to Josh. And then Josh will tell you to talk to somebody else. But right. We are looking for more readers, and we'll slowly. Mitch is going to help kind of coax, or not coax, but bring readers forward, and I'm going to also give some input on those things on hosting and reading, and so stay tuned for those things. But I think that we are looking for people who want to read more. We are not going to put them into rotation as fast as we have been, so they have a little bit more time to mature. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, we have an open breakout room next Wednesday that I'm going to be hosting for anybody that wants to be a reader or is just curious about it. And we'll talk about what things to expect, what things not to do, which I've become an expert at, by the way, over the past year. And it should be a lot of fun. I believe it's at 1 o'clock Eastern. I'm not sure.
Yep. Next question.
Next question coming from Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. What was causing the flicker? I think I missed that.
It's complicated. It's just how we request. It was how we were requesting those frames. The person to ask is, you might want to bring that up in the 3 o'clock session with Andy Carluccio, and he'll answer it there. But I think that it's just the way that our system requests those frames it's unique to our system. So I think we might be the only ones that were having that issue, but we were having it, and it was documentable, and now it's gone. So we think. Next question.
I think that's it for the questions.
We got one more here.
Oh, it just popped in there. Sorry, I missed it, and I reset. The next one's from TJ Asher. from Minneapolis, Minnesota. It was nice to hear Lois reading the other day. What are we doing to improve our inclusivity moving forward?
It's open to everybody. So Lois made the request of jumping in, and I quickly was like, yeah, let's do that. And so I think that we're going to keep on looking, for figuring out how to make that available. Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, that seminar for next week or lab is at 3 p.m. Eastern. 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern.
Bill?
And I'm sure Mitch will do a great job in getting you set up. But one of the things you can do now, and everybody can do it, is just literally watch the show. You can probably see the questions coming up as they come up and do your own version of reading the questions. There's nothing like getting into the real flow of these are the questions that Office Hours has. This is what they sound like. This is how they're often really well written, but sometimes not, and you have to face that. So just practice on your own if you are interested in being a reader, and eventually if you do that, you'll get better and better and better until you will find yourself as a reader.
Good, Mitchell.
And if you pop over to panel chat here, I'm seeing that Josh mentions that Sunday Reader sign-up sheet is ready. Reading interest can be filed on the new volunteer form and volunteer spreadsheet, so you can sign up.
Yeah, and I think whether it's a reader or being on the panel, of all those things, it's just such a great way to develop yourself. I mean, it's almost like our version of, what was it, Toastmasters or whatever. So, of just really getting the reps in. Like it is so hard to get the reps of doing this kind of show. We were talking about it the other day. Someone brought up in a meeting that I was talking to is how few podcasts feel professional. How few of them actually really work, and some of that has to come down to the hosts just don't have as much experience. This is a great way to every day or every week to be up there doing things without having to come up with your own podcast yet. so that's so I highly recommend jumping into not only volunteering on the back end, but volunteering as a reader or as a panelist, because I think it just makes everybody better at what they do. It makes, we meet better because we're here all the time and we get good at it. Our system gets better, our process gets better. We're more comfortable with the whole kit and caboodle. I think that's actually the technical term for that. Next question.
Next question in from Alexander Knight in Vancouver, British Columbia. What is the sweet spot for the number of panelists on at one time, and why? Have we ever reached a limit where we could not let someone on the show?
Right now, we have a hard limit of about 20. So 20 is our outer reach. In the past, that maximum was 49 because that's how many we could see in one show. And in the early days of COVID or middle days of COVID, it wasn't uncommon for us to have 35 to 40 panelists. I think that's too many. I think that you either didn't have, there was a lot of times people didn't have any, they couldn't get a word in edgewise, or questions were answered over 7 or 8 people when they could have been done by 3 or 4. So I think that to me, the sweet spot is about 12, 12 people who can answer those questions. I think that 16 and 20 can totally work. And if we have enough, if they're really experts, but the problem when you get into the 16 to 20 is that each person is just getting so little to do. Is it worth them being there for 2 hours? And so that's always the thing that goes in the back of my head. But I think that below 8 requires more lifting, to kind of move. So I think it's in the 8 to 12 range is really the best range. Go ahead, Bill.
Couldn't agree more, and it's been surprising to me. We've had shows in the past where I didn't have just one panel to watch out for, but I've had 2 screens of that, and it is incredibly disruptive to have to scroll through to see if somebody is looking like they're interested in coming in or has anybody new joined or something like that. It was just too many human beings to manage, so I'm 100% behind Alex in this. His numbers seem to me to be reflecting what my brain can handle in a hosting or even a panelist situation.
Yeah, and I think that the main thing is as we have more, and the panelists have been very good at this. If you've seen it recently, when we have a big panel of 16 people or more, the panelists get more disciplined, like they just don't raise their hand for everything. And when they have a smaller one, the panelists are more aggressive because we have to be, because you need people to raise more hands. And so it goes back and forth between what makes the most sense. Next question.
Peter Belbin in Houston, Texas. How does anyone that's interested in contributing to the back-end software engineering manage to become part of that group? For example, you mentioned the dev group.
start with the forums that Josh is putting out, and or reach out to Josh, and he'll get you pointed in the right direction. But we'd love to have. I would recommend digging into this. I don't know if what we're doing right now is the future of how virtual events get done, but I think it's pointing towards it. And I think that we're all figuring this out together. Like, how do we create systems down the road that really solve this problem, that stand, to get back to the question we had before, how do we build stuff that we can all suddenly appear and produce something much, much better than StreamYard, much, much better than other people, much better than broadcast. And we're figuring out what that looks like. We don't have the answer yet, but I think that getting involved in it means that you're helping to design what that looks like too. Next question.
From TJ Asher in Minneapolis, Minnesota, we strive to make a welcoming and safe environment, but it seems we do not have a lot of female participants. Is there anything we can do to improve that participation level?
Go ahead, Bill.
We've been talking about this and been aware of it since the earliest days of office hours. We've always tried to be as inclusive, and we've asked people to come in. But for my 2 cents worth, there are only a certain number of people who can take this much time out of a day, every day, or even regularly. And most of the extraordinary women in our tech field are so extraordinary that they're working all the time, and it's hard to get them. I know there's maybe 10 women I can think of who have been on the show, been great in terms of contributing to the panel. But the next time I talk to them or I see them somewhere online or something like that, I'm just completely full up, and my career is important to me, and I have to watch that, and I don't have time to spend 3 hours a week coming in and doing something and volunteer right now. That's just not where my life is. So hopefully more and more and more, but we've always tried to be as inclusive and welcoming as we possibly can be. It's just sometimes difficult.
Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, and Chad points out that there is plenty of women in the back scene working on the back side of things.
Yeah, and I think that, there is, Rob Collins does point out that office hours seems to be a bit older. And I think that in the case, we're the ones that can afford to do this. I'd like to take the time off. So, not all of us are older, but, Alex, the other Alex is holding up the younger crew that's here. He's not part of the old crew, but Harshid I don't think is also holding that. But I think that, and I also think it's why we look the way we do as well, or that we're all, is because we're a reflection of the people who have the time to do this and have the experience to do it. To answer questions in real time is not something that most people some people can, and we definitely have people on at times that are younger that have an incredible amount of knowledge, but to be able to comfortably jump to a lot of things is a mixture of time availability as well as that. So next question.
Next question from Alexander Knight from Vancouver, British Columbia. Moving forward, we're tweaking how we prep a guest for coming on to the show with respect to optimal audio and video. Are kits being sent out to those that don't have equipment, and how do we overcome complaints about setup?
What's going to happen probably, we're not sending kits out yet. If we have the budget, eventually we will. Like for Michael Krasny, I send out mics. And we may get to a point where we have our own mics that we can just have a 5 or 6 mics that we can send out. That's the thing I'm mostly trying to fix is people's audio. It's the video stuff I can deal with, but the bad audio just drives me crazy. So I think that the first thing that'll happen is with the kits. I don't know why my watch just told me the time for random reason. So anyway, the second thing we'll do, of course, is sending something out. I want to be able to send out kits that we can control, and obviously the long-term goal would be that we send out kits to every guest that standardize what we do, and we take it over, and that's part of our production process. But we just, from a financial perspective, can't do that yet. Next question.
Alexander Knight from Vancouver. We're switching to Peter Belbin from Houston with a tech question. Perhaps not a match for this show's style. Would there be options to do more regarding use of supersource animations exposed through the TD control interface?
Yeah, I definitely think I think we could do more with super sources. I mean, I think we do a lot with super sources, and what I like about them is that they're to the point. Like they do what they need to do. We're not, but I think that there's ways that we can keep on playing with those and making those easier to get a hold of. So, I definitely think that that's in our future. But again, we want to be as much protein as possible and not try to do anything zany for zany's sake. Next question.
Next question coming into us from Paul Valhus in Cedar Creek, Texas. What version of Office Hours will start to push content to podcast clients like Castbox, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on and on?
Soon. Yeah. So we're, my time frame gets a little wider in a couple weeks, and so I'm going to be focused on a lot of upgrades really fast. So we're trying to get all this stuff done. But one of the things I want to do is definitely put it out to Apple Podcasts at least. We're working on that. I think one of the things we've decided is like what we're thinking about is, do we want to do every day as a podcast, or do we do have a team that takes the best answers and condenses them down so that there's like a 2-hour podcast or a 3-hour podcast every week, that if you just listen to that, you get kind of caught up. So that's one of the things we're trying to figure out. Next question.
Next question from Paul Valhus, back again from Cedar Creek. Will we have anytime soon a not quiet viewing room for Office Hours?
Maybe. Like, I don't know how much, I think that eventually the quiet viewing room will just be replaced by a live stream. And there won't be any, there'll just be a not quiet room or a behind the scenes room, but there won't be a quiet room because I think the quality at some point will be so much higher in the stream than Zoom that it won't make as much sense. Next question.
Alexander Knight's in from Vancouver, Canada. Have we discussed producing a promo video that we can pin as the introduction video on our YouTube channel to entice people to participate?
That is part of the plan for 2.5. Once we finish the update, I mean, I literally have been using YouTube as a storage location. We're figuring our details out, and we have to put it somewhere. So people had requested to do that, and so I haven't been doing any work on the YouTube channel. Once we finish the update to 2.5, we're going to start focusing on PR. So fixing that, getting more out in other social networks, streaming to other social networks, podcasts, those are all over the next 2 or 3 months. Yeah. Next question.
Next question in from Paul Valhus in Cedar Creek, Texas. What Discord topics cover Office Hours 2.5, and is it very active? Yeah, there's our Office Hours 2.0 channel that you should be able to see there, and that's where it's getting discussed. Next question. TJ Asher, Minneapolis, Minnesota asked, we've looked at a lot of graphics in the past showing some really interesting breakdowns of some amazing graphics packages, especially in sports entertainment. Is there a plan for a cohesive graphics package in the future? Yeah, I mean, I think that at first we're going to make the new upgrades to be stable and make sure that they're working and everything the way it is. I just want to get it to a point where it's there and we don't have any black frames. We don't have any errant hits. We don't have any, things are getting so close right now, to making that work. And then we'll have a discussion about what can we do next? How do we add, and that's probably like a 2.6, of how do we update a bunch of the graphics and process to make it just that little bit better. But right now we're just trying to move everything over to the new system and make it stable, and then we'll start adding little bits and pieces. Next question. From Ryan Rademan in Chicago, Illinois. What are the primary elements of Office Hours 2.0 that we hope to leave behind with Office Hours 2.5? I think with the system, we're not trying to leave things behind. I think that Mickey is correct in the AV sync is horrible because we're averaged across all of us. And so individual AV sync, I think, is going to help a lot. We're going to push hard to have all the panelists really bring their game as much as they can up visually as well as audio-wise. So I think that that's going to help move it forward. And even little things like framing, like
we're going to get pretty specific about that Fenwick frame to get people to really fit into that window, because it does look a lot better when we do that. I think that the audio changes will be good. I think that other thing, that those are the big things we want to leave behind, and then we're hoping to add, more, just more fine tuning. Again, I don't think that we're trying to change something dramatically. We're just trying to turn all the screws a bit, but the change to ISO audio is dramatic. The change to ISO video is dramatic. So we have already done some pretty dramatic things in this area. I think that those will. I think there's not much past that, other than moving the whole system, starting to work on automation, so that there's not so much hand building of things every day. Next question.
From Chris Widener in Lafayette, Indiana. How worried are you, Alex, for second hours to get content strikes on YouTube for second hours?
We don't, not very. So, I think that the number one is, I don't think we've ever gotten any strikes for it. I don't think we've gotten a strike for anything that we've done. We've gotten content flags. I'll be honest, because I'm not trying to monetize our YouTube channel, and I never will. I don't care about the content flags. So I'm just like, yeah, sure. So unless a content flag actually blocks the video or cuts the video out, and we've had a handful of those, 4 or 5 of those over 900 shows. If I'm not getting a strike, if it's just flagging me and demonetizing my video, I don't really care. So we just, as far as I'm concerned, we can kind of ignore those. We don't show, again, I am conscious to it. It's not like we ignore the fact that we could get into a content flag. So we don't show a lot of things like that. But if I'm going to show something that we want to see, I'm still going to show it. Next question.
From TJ Asher in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Where will we stream to in the future? Will it still be just YouTube, or will we begin streaming to other places like LinkedIn or? Yeah,
so once we get it stable, I want to expand where we're streaming to. So I want to stream to LinkedIn, Twitter, Twitch, Facebook. I also want to put out an audio stream that is distributable. And with funding, I'll put it on satellite, so that people, it can go to the rest of the world, even if they don't have, because a lot of the world still relies on satellite for downlinks. And so those are the kind of things that I'm looking at right now, and will continue to work on. But we will spread that out a bit. It's not what I recommend for most people. I don't think it's a good idea, but we want to see how every platform responds to what we're building. So as we do that R&D, I think it's useful for us to put it into multiple platforms. Next question.
Paul Valhus in Cedar Creek, Texas. Who are the major players putting together Office Hours 2.5, and what are their roles?
I don't know if I can name everybody that's working on it. It's a big team. I mean, there's obviously Mickey and Richard and Jonas and Josh and Tlalok and Wansi Robles, and I'm trying to think of, those are some of the key people that we have there, and those are the ones that I just pull off the top of my head. But I know that there's more, and I apologize that I'm not getting to all of them without a list. But it's a JJ, of course, and then Kevin Hansen is also helping with that stuff too, and JJ kind of keeps everything kind of tied together there on his end as well. So there's a lot of folks that are working on those things. But it's it's a big process, and that doesn't include all of the folks that actually use it every day. So the production group is making a huge impact on this as well, because they're giving us feedback, and we're figuring out what we need to make work. Next question.
And it's for me. I'm asking, any changes expected for Mukhana with 2.5?
We expect the panel view to be working inside of Zoom. So we're testing that right now. So in the back end, so you'll be able to, in the not too distant future, be able to open the panel view inside of Zoom as a Zoom app, and be able to do that. So we're doing it. That's kind of a thing that we're working on right now, and then we'll hopefully expand what we're doing there to make it just a little bit more tied into what the Zoom experience. That's why we're not taking on any other requests right now. so we're very focused. Next question.
Paul Valhus is back. What skills are most needed that we may not have for Office Hours 2.5? What software should we be mastering?
I mean, the big thing is just being part of the production team. It's not really a specific software. It's learning how to do all the things that the production team does, and doing that feedback there. That's the number one thing to do. Next question.
From Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is there any interest in creating promotional content to inform the uninitiated about what is office hours? Short video, graphics, voiceover, primer?
There is. Once we get 2.0 to a point where we're happy with it, then we will go more towards that. I'm ever since I was a child, I've been very reticent to showing my notes. so like I was one of the kids that just wrote the answer for everything. Or as a young kid, I would erase all my work. So anyway, so we're almost there, and we're not ready to do promotions yet. But we're when I feel like, again, when we're really going to turn up the heat is when I feel like I can turn to CNN and then turn back to our thing, and I don't feel like there was a huge change. When we get to that point, then I'm going to turn all the burners up. So, and when we can do that every time we have a glitch, that extends out when I'm going to do that kind of thing by another couple weeks. I'm like, if we have a glitch on Monday, then there's 2 weeks of work that I want to see it go flat. Before I say, okay, we're ready to turn everything up. I mean, I'm not saying that we'll never have issues, but we have to get to a point where they're happening less than every other week. And we're getting closer and closer every day. I mean, when you look back where we were when we started 2.0, the level and smoothness of what we're doing now is pretty amazing. Go ahead, Mitchell.
As far as guests go, I think we've exceeded CNN's capability because their guests just don't look anywhere as good as us.
Yep. But I think it's not that we have to look exactly like CNN. I just want it to be like you didn't notice, like you just went to another channel and you were like, oh, like it's not like what happened here, and we're very close. I think the number one thing that, again, that's why we're going to start really pushing on the Fenwick frame is the number one thing that isn't working right now is that our heads are too big in the frame. So, yeah, I'm talking to you, Mitch. So anyway, so we're going to really push that Fenwick frame so that we can kind of get all into that, and then getting our exposure correct. We're still got a couple dark frames here and there, so we really want to look for getting that done. But we're very close. Next question.
Paul Valhus in Cedar Creek, Texas, asks again, what skills are most needed in building Office Hours 2.5 that we may be lacking on now, especially software skills?
I mean, more people. I mean, I don't really have. I don't think that there's certain skills that are there. We have people that can do that, and the skills that are, especially in the back end, pretty specialized. but I think that we do want to do more where we train more people on how to use Isadora and how to use Universe and how to use those things, so that there's more people thinking about it. Yeah. Next question.
Bobby Rafferty in Central Florida. What does the future hold for after hours as office hours gets expanded?
After hours is going to keep on getting deeper. So you're seeing us slowly add more. So after hours is slowly adding more and more labs to the system, and so you're seeing them kind of move forward. And so I think you're going to see more of that. You're going to see more Q&As, more labs, more things that are more of a discussion about a thing that we're all working together on. So I think that it's only going to keep getting busier in that case. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asks, would you ever think of implementing the Waves Cloud MX Mixer, which would provide full Waves plugins for the live mix?
Yeah, I mean, it's potential. I've been looking at Waves in general and thinking about Waves as a mixing platform for what we're doing as I try to figure it out. We're not going to do it in the cloud immediately, but even just on a piece of software, it's not out of the question. Just haven't quite figured it out yet. Go ahead, Mitchell.
Yeah, I think latency will be an issue, particularly if you're monitoring.
We couldn't do it. It would have to be, the production would have to be in the cloud, and we're not there yet. We will be there, we're just not there yet. And so it's how do we do it locally is the question. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, traditionally, some of us started out with processing, whether it was Waves or other plugins in our mix. And I think everybody's gotten to the point where we've pretty much removed everything and are trying to send the cleanest possible signal so that on the office hours and Mickey or whomever is doing the audio mixing and sweetening, can take what we're sending and turn it into what makes the most sense for the show. So it's a back end. I'm thinking of effects less as a back end thing, or less as a front end thing that I need to do, and more as let me send it clean and then let them figure out what it needs to be to fit me in the show.
Next question.
Jonas Dattel from Stuttgart, Germany. Does working on 2.5 also mean improving the content from the panel?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a couple chain reactions there. One is that we are going to get more aggressive about more panelists, or just increasing the group of people that might be available for that as we finish 2.5. It's not something I'm worried about right now. Also, what will happen typically is that, when 2.5 is stable, we will promote it more widely, and we will be much more like the old days, pushing more for, hey, if you're interested in being in the panel, you can join. Some of the extra graphics that I want to do is start doing little extra lower thirds that give people places to go to learn. If you're interested in being a panelist, here's a QR code, or there's all these little things that I want to do once we get through the conversion. So we will be actively, getting that. I think that a lot of that also is, some of the other things that we have to think about are the second hours tend to drive how many people are in the first hour, like that. So, and Josh is really working on that with councils. And so as we start to get, denser and denser second hours, I think we're going to typically get more and more people in the first hour. And then we are trying to do more verticals. And so you saw a really great audio. We moved the audio to Wednesday, and if we can keep on having that audio, that's kind of what we're trying to get to, is that there are, each day there's a bunch of specialists about video or about audio, about other things like that, and we kind of build that out. So I think that we're going to, but the second hours are really the first thing for us to improve, because that tends to draw a lot of people. And, it's a really good time, we can keep on telling people this, but it's a really good time to be a panelist, because as we turn up the knobs, like we haven't turned any knobs. Like I haven't turned, I'm trying to get all this working first. And so this has just been, very grassroots, and nothing major. But as we turn up those knobs of people, and as more people start coming into the system, as we bring guests in, because I'm holding back on a lot of guests as well, because I want to make sure that we, the system can actually handle them. There'll be a lot more people. There'll be a lot more panel, and the panel is such an incredible opportunity to get to know people. You get to practice. You get to be, get good at being in. Just even if you're just in meetings, the panel is a great training to do that. But it's also a great place to be out, to serve other people, but also to be out in front of people. Like for me, the people that really exist in office hours for me are people that have been in the panel, because I can feel, I know them, I know what they're doing. I definitely interact with other folks, but I really know people there. And I think that I'm not the only one. And so it's a real good opportunity. There is a point sometime next year where it will become incredibly competitive to be on the panel, because there will be limits to how many people can be on the panel. And, if you're not on the panel right now and we don't know who you are, it'll get harder. It'll take a lot longer to be on the panel. Then, I'm just letting you know that a year from now, they'll be like, oh, you can be on a bunch of shows that are not office hours, that are going to be what you have to do for a year before you can be on office hours. There's going to be some point within the next year or two where you're on other shows that we do for a year before you end up as a panelist on office hours. Like somewhere in the next 24 months, it's going to be like that. And so the time to do that, the time to be on a panel is right now. And so I would highly recommend it. Next question.
Next question coming in from Hashid Trivedi in Daytona Beach, Florida. Would any monetizing help with back-end costs?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking to folks about that, and we may make it available for the members to donate some money to us. We're also talking to some corporate partners about some help to do that, and so it definitely would make things go faster if we had some more money. So we're working on that. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia asks or says, I just want to say office hours is already better than local news, in my opinion.
Well, thank you, Tony. I'm not competing with local news, though. I'm competing with CNN. So because I want to, and the reason I say that is that it's not because of office hours. It's because my goal is to build a system that anyone can use that allows them to compete with national broadcast content. Like, that is the goal, to talk about the things that people want to talk about. And I want that content for us to know how to show people and know how to train people to talk about whatever subject they want to talk about, and not have it be seen as lesser than content because the quality isn't there, because the interaction isn't there. And so I think that we can outdo broadcast at its own game. And I want to make sure that everybody is able to do that, and talk about the content. And so it's not a commitment to office hours being, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about it being us cutting the ground and getting it to a point that it can be that. That we can say, we know how to do it, and we can show you how to do it, and then we show a lot of other people how to do that. And I think that that's a much-needed diversification of information. Next question.
Josh Kaufman in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. What is the minimum support crew necessary to run Office Hours 2.5? Will this be an improvement over 2.0? Will any newer roles be added when we have the crew support?
Talking to JJ, the minimum number is 2 in the back end, outside of the panel. Like, that you really need to have about 2 people to run it. Richard Lavery says 2.5 JJs, which is maybe 4 or 5 people. So anyway, so maybe it's more than that. So our goal is to get to a point where with 2 or 3 people, you can run a great show. But we also want the infrastructure to be able to scale to, especially with greeters and with people working on graphics and people working on extra pieces, we want to be able to scale up to 50. Have 50 people be able to run a show that's amazing. But if we don't have those people, we can turn something on that's good, that's solid, at 2 people, one or 2 people. And so we're trying to figure that out as we go forward. Next question.
Andy Carluccio from San Francisco, California. Is Office Hours currently produced in the cloud from a point of view? Data center is in San Rafael. Almost everyone remotely access it, and we don't have to pay for something we use every day.
That is true. It is like the cloud. It's really an interesting way to think about it, but it is really a cloud solution in a lot of ways. That we are accessing all of those things. It's with a data center, a very low key data center, low brow data center, but it's a data center. But Andy's totally correct that we are. I mean, almost the entire production is being done. It's by people who are remote. So that's an interesting way to approach it. Even JJ, when we talked about running it, is coming in from his house. so it's an interesting perspective. Next question.
Peter Belbin in Houston, Texas. Perhaps having another show, not every day, that's not recorded would be a way for people to try out different roles and become more prepared for the recorded shows.
Yeah, go ahead, Mitchell.
Funny you should say that, Peter, because that's what we're doing with readers right now. Starting next Wednesday when we have our first reader breakout session, we're going to do a number of those, and then we're going to fire up the back end, not go on the air, and just do it as a test. And everybody's going to step in and try out what it's like to be in a reader in actual on-air conditions without being on air. So it should be fun.
Yeah, and I do think that is a future for us in after hours of doing, we're already seeing labs that are being done that are already very professional. But I think that there's more opportunities in after hours for us to have little roundtables and chats. And we're having a chat with Andy later today. And so whether it's a chat with an expert, a lab that's being put together by one of the members, or potentially new shows that we can do in after hours, I think you're absolutely spot on that can be used as a way for people to prep. And again, the panel, I do believe that the panel in a year or two is going to be, it's going to take a long time in other things before you end up on the panel. So, just kind of like saying, like, if you want to do the panel thing, the time to do it is now. Is to get in and kind of get into that loop of us seeing that, because again, we're going to start. There's going to be some point where we start inviting the people for the second hours that are going to increase the number of people that are watching, that are going to increase the number of people that are in what we're doing. That's going to increase all of those things, and it gets more and more competitive. And this is the nature of all things. I worked in alternative rock. I worked in all kinds of other things, and it all starts. Everything's kind of loose, and we're all figuring stuff out, and then suddenly everything goes whoop. It turns into something, and so you want to take advantage of the time that it's still forming. Next question.
Hello, sorry about that. Joe Kidd from the Bay Area in California. Jason Snell broadcast with continuity camera on MacBreak Weekly using the iPhone 14 Pro main camera without effects. Could this meet Office Hours 2.5 standards? If no, what are your thoughts on the quality of Snell's video from MacBreak Weekly? Thank you.
I think it was pretty good. I think the color was a little off, to be honest. But I think overall it looks like a great camera, and I think that you could absolutely use that as a camera in 2.5. It's really the mic that makes the mic makes the panelist. So next question.
Peter Belbin, Houston, Texas. Being so dependent on Zoom, will moving to 60p be a thing anytime soon?
We may move to 60p for the production, because there's other things that we want to show in 60p. I think that in Zoom right now, I'm not too concerned about getting that, but I think 60p somewhere off in the future for the production to kind of convert. And if Zoom does that as well somewhere in the future, it might make sense. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael asked, if we're still processing audio on premises, could the eMotion LV1 platform be a useful mixing tool?
It might be. Yeah. I mean, I was actually looking at the LV1 last night, so it definitely could be a possibility. We're just still working on it. Next question.
Paul Valhus from Austin, Texas. No, he's from Cedar Creek. Sorry. Can you plug this afternoon show again with Leo? What are your YouTube coordinates?
There are no YouTube coordinates. so we do this only for the members. So the members of Michael Krasny's gray matter is where we're doing that, and so that's where you can go to be part of that. So if we gave it away for quite some time, and hundreds of people joined from office hours, and so you'll see an announcement in maybe a half an hour. You'll see an announcement inside of that community to be part of the live stream of that interview, and then otherwise it's going to come out next week before MacBreak. So Leo will be on at 11 o'clock this morning. So if you're in the Gray Matter community, definitely check that out. And we finally figured out how to get the webinar scheduling to work, we think. So anyway, so we're gonna see how that goes, but you should only have to register one more time to a webinar, and then it should be done. So we were doing it. That's a long story. Anyway, so we think that's solved, and we are going to, but we'll have a live. I would get in there. To be honest with you, if you see that link right now, go in there, ask your questions for Leo, vote those questions up. But I would do it right now, because I think in the past when we brought Leo on, it gets pretty busy. So the Mukhana's for that one is already opened. The links are in the Gray Matter community inside of Discord. And if you want to join that community now, you can go to graymatter.show. I think it's now $5 a month or something like that for access to the behind the scenes to see the live stream. But the podcast is free, so it'll come out next week. But if you want to be part of it and ask questions and vote on those questions, you need to be there. But 11 o'clock this morning is when we'll be doing that. We're pretty excited. Leo's actually coming down. I invited him down here, and then I thought, oh, he's not going to come. And then this morning, like really early, he's like, if I leave at 10, do you think I can make it? I'm like, yeah, I think you can make it, because I think, we're in the pit. This is the ILM, the infamous, the pit. And that's where I'm coming in from right now. And so we'll be excited to kind of put that together. So only a couple hours from now. All right. There we go. When we got into the hour, I was like, this is going to be a real short trip, and not only did we do that, I think we almost set a record on a number of questions answered. I think our record, is 76. And so so that was a good hour. Hopefully, we're going to be, we will do this every couple weeks to keep keep you up to date on what's happening, so that, and just answer as many questions as you can. We want everyone to be involved in thinking about it and have you thinking about it. So think about, really think about things you have questions about with 2.5. It's all something we're happy to talk about on these hours. And Bill, are you doing Final Cut at noon?
I'm going to just go on and answer questions to people. I don't have any content set up, but if anybody's watched any of the Final Cut pieces that I've done and you had any questions left over, come in today and I'll be around as long as anybody wants to talk about those.
Fantastic. So Bill will be there at noon. Of course, we have the education hour tomorrow. Great collection of educators that are going to be joining us talking about education and doing Q&A there. And of course, Sunday is the day. If you have questions that are not 2.5 related, but about office hours, about why we're doing these things that are a little bit more philosophical about our business and those types of things, and you want us to speak even more freely than we already do, Sunday is the best way to do that. So Sunday morning is the way to kind of solve that there. And thanks to the producers. Great set of questions. Great conversation. Thanks to the panelists. It's great group today. Can't do it without you. And thanks to the great folks at the back end that make this work every single day, 7 days a week. It's quite an amazing thing we put together. So I was just talking about it in LA yesterday with someone, and they all they're like, can I come in for doing a second hour? And I was like, yeah, you can come in. So anyway, so we've got potentially some new guests that should be pretty interesting once we get everything sorted out. But it's always amazing to talk about it because it's just, it is kind of this crazy thing that we've all created, that everyone's created together. So anyway, I appreciate all of you. All right, let's jump into after hours. It's so quiet here. I mean, my whispering is probably even crazier because I can hear the air conditioner right now. And if you notice me going like this, I didn't know what temperature it was because I couldn't see it. So I just turned it all the way down, and it's getting really, really cold. It was warm when we started, and now even I'm cold. And if I'm cold, I know that it's got to be close to 60 degrees because I'm not cold until about 64 degrees. And then at 60 degrees, I go, oh, this is really cold. I'm gonna have to turn the icebox off soon. So okay, I'm gonna go get set up.